Hey there, and welcome to Insomnia Insight number 369. I believe this is an important one. We're going to talk about fatigue, exhaustion, feeling drained, having no energy. We're going to talk about where that comes from and what to do to set your path towards liberation from those types of discomforts and much more good things coming your way. So let's get started here. We're going to talk again about like two types of fatigue, actually, mostly the second one. But the two types of fatigue we're going to talk about is what I call the Q, or like the physical fatigue, and the emotional fatigue. And I think if you haven't seen Insomnia Insight number 346, check that out as well. It talks about how the struggle often creates a lot of discomfort during the day, rather than simply sleeping less. So that's another good episode if you have had a lot of fatigue, you feel kind of bruised and battered. So, okay, let's get started here. So let's talk about the first one, which is like the fatigue as a cue, or the physical fatigue. This is something very obvious. The reason for it is very obvious, and it behaves in a very obvious and predictable way. So when fatigue is a cue, that's, for example, you just run a 5K and you feel tired in your body, or you watch your toddlers all day long, you kind of feel like exhausted from doing that. But here's the thing. The fatigue, at least the fatigue from running, often feels pretty good. It kind of feels tiring in a good way. And when you're watching like these small toddlers, that may not feel good at the moment, but resting feels really, really good. When you get home, you ran that 5K, you take a shower, you sit down, and you just kind of feel the energy like flowing back into your body. It feels great. Similarly, like you watched your toddlers, the whole day, they kept you super busy, and now grandma's taking care of them for like 2 hours. You're like, oh, it feels so good. Kind of doing nothing feels great. So fatigue is a cue, or like physical fatigue. It's very obvious where it comes from, and it behaves in a very predictable way. When you're resting, your energy just flows back into your body and mind and soul and whatnot. Emotional fatigue, on the other hand, is deep and it is sticky. It is very different. It behaves in a very different way. So when I say deep, what do I mean with that? Well, it's kind of like it's deep-seated. It comes from deep within, You're not only tired, you're like exhausted, you're drained, you have absolutely no energy, right? And oftentimes, like the littlest effort triggers a response that seems out of proportion. You're like, oh my gosh, I had to do the dishes and I couldn't. I literally couldn't do the dishes. I just was so exhausted. I had to sit down and rest. There's this element of like, it seems out of proportion. It's like, it doesn't make sense. Like, where does it come from? There's this air of mystery around it too, and strangeness about it. And also, like, nothing helps. Oftentimes it's like, whether I sleep a lot or a little actually doesn't seem to make a difference. And this can often be, someone who's, this channel is really about insomnia, right? So somebody has maybe struggled with insomnia and actually is doing well, has been doing well for quite some time, but the fatigue is there and nothing seems to help. Sleeping more, sleeping little doesn't change it. Resting or exercising also, like neither seems to help. Even if there's no stress going on, like it's just there. It is just there. Nothing seems to change it, right? And it is sticky. It's deep and it is sticky, meaning it's kind of like a spider web. Like the more you try to get out, the more sticky it gets. Like the more you're doing to feel less fatigued, the more of it you experience. And why is that? Why is that? Well, remember, emotions are signals. This is super, super important. Emotions are signals. The emotion, the fear as an emotion, that is meant to be kind of signal. Watch out, there might be something there. No, there's not. Okay, fear goes away. Like a dog can get kind of anxious. What's going on? And then there's nothing there. Okay, they feel great again. They start eating their food. The difference between us and other sentient beings is that we are Homo sapiens sapiens. We can think about our thoughts and we can think about our emotions. And what can happen is we can confuse the signal for the problem. We can confuse the signal, the sadness, the emotional fatigue, the anxiety, the fear, etc., we can think that the signal is the problem. We identify the signal as the threat and the thing that we should get away from. And when that happens, when we label a signal as unwanted, we don't want that. Basically, we're telling the brain, I don't want to hear that. And the brain's interpretation of that is like, you're not listening. You're not listening. And what do we do when we talk to someone and they're not listening? We're like, hey, listen to me. Come on, look at me. You know, I'll have something to tell you. And the brain acts that exact same way. So the more you want the fatigue to just like go away, you're researching, thinking, experimenting, you're deploying effort, you're trying all kinds of things, the more the brain's like, you're not listening, and the more sticky it becomes. So that is why the emotion, the fatigue as an emotion gets sticky the more you try to make it go away, just like everything else, just like anxiety, fear, you know, when you don't want to be awake, you have more insomnia, all that discomfort, you know, it really becomes sticky the more you try to go away. And you can see that emotion fatigue behaves the same way as everything else. That's like pain, anxiety, insomnia, etc. And another thing that makes it sticky is kind of labeling it or judging it in a way. And this is something like, I'm too tired, or I'm excessively fatigued, or there's really something wrong with me, right? And just take a look at this for a second. I think this is very important. Look at I'm too tired versus I'm extremely tired, right? Or I'm excessively fatigued versus I'm really fatigued. So I'm extremely fatigued, that if somebody says that, they're communicating to you that they're very, very fatigued, they're very, very tired, but there's not this element of like, there's something wrong with it. When you add I'm too, or I'm excessively, or something like, or I shouldn't feel this way, something like that, then that says something is wrong, and it calls for investigation. It calls for I have to find out why. It calls for I have to do something about this, which leads again to more resistance and more effort to get away from it, and more stickiness. All right. But if you don't have the two, if you just say I'm very tired, I'm extremely tired, I'm super tired, when the lack of that like opinion about it, that calls for actually no action, no investigation, no self-criticism, and a lot of you can probably predict what I'm going to say next. This calls for just self-kindness. That is really always the answer. Self-kindness. When you no longer label it that way, and you understand it, then really it leads to this path of like, okay, I have to be kind to myself and not try to like judge myself or try to fight this thing, you know. And when that happens, when you're listening to the brain instead of sort of trying to ignore it, and when you're willing to experience that discomfort, remember, thoughts want to be heard and feelings want to be felt, which I learned from Michelle. Well, when you do that, the brain's like, okay, this person is listening, they're tuning in, they're not trying to ignore me. And when you go that gentle path with self-compassion, awareness, that truly with time will liberate you from the struggle, from really any of this discomfort that we talk about here, and you'll start feeling more and more refreshed. You'll feel better, and you'll do really, really well. I know it's not easy. It's not easy at all, but I think this is the path. I truly believe this is the path for emotional fatigue. So I hope you found this really helpful. And in fact, if you would like to talk more about sleep with myself, there is an opportunity to do that for the first time ever in the history of the channel. Gas and Break workshop on Zoom this coming Saturday. It's going to be at 10 a.m. Pacific time, $19. We have, I believe, 9 open slots. One is already taken. We have 9 open slots. So check it out on our website, thesleepcoachschool.com. You can register there. It's going to be about 30, 45 minutes of me talking about the gas and break model, and then a Q&A. And we also have, of course, if you're already ready for that, we have the full self-coaching master program. It's great if you're someone who likes to learn via video and you don't mind sharing the path with others. That is great for you. And then we also have, of course, if you need more support and guidance, BedTyme on the App Store. Just a few minutes a day or more. I'm there coaching. You can ask me as many questions as you would like. So that said, I thank you so much for tuning in. Look forward to having you back soon. And until then, take it easy.